Hello children, my name is Monica Shori and I am here again to discuss about another very beautiful chapter of our class 12th. The book name is Flamingo and the chapter is On the Face of It. Before we read the chapter, I'll just give you a brief description about the author. The author of this chapter is Susan Hill. She was born in England in the year 1942. She is a prolific writer and has authored many novels, collection of stories, and children's fiction. She had to undergo tragic circumstances which include the death of her first partner, second child, and her own near-death experience. In her semi-autobiographical novel, In the Springtime of the year 1974, she talks a great deal about loss, sense of loneliness, and isolation, and reminiscent of Derry from the play On the Face of It. Coming to the title, On the Face of It, the title is very apt because it is an expression which means that something is good when we take a glimpse of it, just like all that glitters is not gold. But upon a closer look, it is not so, or vice versa. So before judging, we have to see what actually is there. So nothing is so, you can say that on the surface everything seems good. But before that, we have to go beyond that. Just like in this materialistic world, people are often tempted by the outer looks and are unable to see the real internal beauty. It applies to the things and the people in the same way. A person may be quite different from what others think of him or what impressions he gives at the first sight. In the same thing we'll read in this chapter, because people have misconceptions about Mr. Lamb, but he proves himself to be a different kind of man. So the title is very apt according to the chapter. The theme of the play On the Face of It reveals the pain, sufferings, and isolation which the physically handicapped people go through. The ruthless attitude of the society affects them adversely, and they become even more sorrowful and withdrawn, like Derry, a 14-year-old boy with a half-burned face. But later, he encounters an angel of peace and happiness in the garden of Mr. Lamb, who changes his attitude towards life. This is how Derry gets back confidence at the end of the play. In fact, Mr. Lamb shows Derry the light at the end of the tunnel. The play also conveys a message that looks are often misleading and deceptive. So we shouldn't have preconception in our minds about others on the basis of their appearances. Rather, try to see through the real and internal beauty of their soul. So I'll just come to the summary. You just take out your books and see. In the first part, the play portrays a beautiful world which is filled with the sadness and loneliness of a young boy and old man, both physically impaired. One of Mr. Lamb's legs had been blown off during the war, and he had been replaced with a tin leg. An acid had burned one side of Derry's face, leaving him with not only a scarred face but also a personality that was negative and full of hatred. Now, when you read in the beginning of the play, Derry climbed over Mr. Lamb's garden well, thinking that there was no one in the garden. But he was startled to hear a voice say, "Mind the apples." Okay, so there is particular phrase given, "Mind the apples." So Mr. Lamb introduced himself and told Derry that his gate was always open and everyone was welcome inside his house and garden. As soon as Derry saw Mr. Lamb, he was ready to leave, obviously, but Mr. Lamb told him not to be afraid. Derry responded by saying that it was people who were afraid of him. People, including Mr. Lamb, looked at him and felt that he was the ugliest thing they had ever seen. In fact, even when Derry himself looked in the mirror, he would get afraid of what he saw. Derry told him about the acid falling on one side of his face and how he had eaten him up as well. He knew he would always have the same ugly face as it would never change. Derry then asked Mr. Lamb if he was not interested in knowing about him and his accident. Obviously, if you go through this situation and you're telling the other person, you want that the other person should ask you that why you want to tell. So Mr. Lamb replied that he was interested in everything God had made, even the weed in his garden. Other people might want to get rid of weed, but to Mr. Lamb, they were another type of plant. They were all life, same as Derry and him. While he was old, Derry was young. Derry had got a burnt face and Lamb had a tin leg. So while Derry was standing there, Lamb was sitting. However, these physical features were not important. Now Derry became interested in Lamb's problem. He asked how Mr. Lamb had gotten a tin leg. Mr. Lamb revealed that his real leg had blown off years back, and children now called him Lemmy Lamb, which fit but didn't trouble him. So Derry suggested that Mr. Lamb put on trousers to cover up his tin leg so nobody would notice and stare. But Mr. Lamb said that some people stared, but they got tired of watching the same thing. There were other things to stare at. Mr. Lamb said that beauty was relative, just like Beauty and the Beast. He simply discussed about that story. So Derry replied that he had heard all of that before, how beauty was just not what was seen on the outside, it was the inside of a person that mattered, just like the fairy tale, Beauty and the Beast. In that, when Beauty kissed the Beast, he changed into a handsome prince. However, he said that he would never change and no one would ever kiss him. Even his mother kissed him because she had to, and that too only on the other side of his face. So Derry wanted to know if Mr. Lamb's leg hurt. So the old man told him it hurt, but that was unimportant. Derry remembered that people often told him to look at those who were in pain, but were brave, those never cried or complained, and did not feel sorry for themselves. He had also been continually reminded of those worse off than him, the blind, the deaf, those in a wheelchair, or those who were daft in the head and dribbled. Derry was then reminded of an instant when a woman had said that his face was a terrible thing and only a mother could love him. He had heard a lot of other terrible things. Mr. Lamb suggested him not to believe all that one who was heard and to keep his ears shut. In this we are having the conversation, those both are disabled people, but one person is you can say that pessimistic, other one is optimistic. Now maybe because of the age or maybe the experience he had, and the other one is child of 14 years old. Now what is the effect on Derry after Mr. Lamb does counseling? So obviously we will it's not possible to discuss about the whole summary in one segment, so we will again connect in the other segment. So I would like you all to stay connected and we can discuss about that what exactly are our obligations toward these disabled people, or you can say that specially blessed people of the society. Okay children, see you in the next segment. Thank you. Stay connected.